In the autumn of 2021, I was a photographer chasing the raw beauty of Eastern Europe's forgotten corners. My backpacking journey had taken me through crumbling villages and vibrant cities, my camera capturing the textures of time-worn architecture and fleeting moments of local life. I thrived on wandering off the beaten path, seeking hidden gems that felt untouched by the modern world. For weeks, everything had gone smoothly. Hostels were my temporary homes, and local buses carried me across borders with ease. But one day, in a quiet Romanian town, changed everything, etching a memory that still sends shivers down my spine. The town was a postcard of history, its cobblestone streets winding past centuries-old houses with faded shutters and ivy climbing their walls. The air carried the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, and the distant toll of a church bell added a timeless rhythm to the scene. I'd spent the morning photographing a dilapidated manor on the town's outskirts, my heavy camera gear straining. My shoulders exhausted, I decided to skip the next bus and take a taxi to a nearby city, Cebu, where friends were waiting. A local shopkeeper gave me the number of a driver, and within 10 minutes, a battered sedan rolled up, its paint chipped and windows streaked with grime. The driver was a man in his 50s, his face weathered like the cliffs I'd photographed in the Carpathians. His leather jacket was worn thin at the elbows, and a thick mustache obscured half his expression. His eyes, sharp and restless, scanned the street as if expecting trouble. "Cebu?" I asked, leaning toward the open window. He nodded curtly, jerking his thumb toward the back seat. "Get in," he said, his voice gruff like gravel underfoot. Something about him felt off, his guarded demeanor, the way his gaze lingered too long, but I brushed it aside. I was chasing authenticity after all, and this seemed like part of the experience. I tossed my backpack onto the seat and settled in, the car's interior smelling faintly of stale cigarettes and pine air freshener. The engine sputtered to life, and we pulled away from the town's quaint streets, the houses giving way to rolling fields. For the first half hour, the drive was uneventful, the radio crackling with a Romanian folk song that filled the silence. I stared out the window, watching the landscape shift from open farmland to dense forest, the trees growing taller and closer together. Then, without warning, the driver veered off the main road onto a narrow dirt path that snaked into the woods. My stomach tightened. The path was barely wide enough for the car, with branches scraping the sides and rocks crunching under the tires. "Is this a shortcut?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite the unease creeping in. He nodded, eyes fixed ahead. "Shorter." "Way," he muttered, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. I glanced at the GPS on my phone, but the signal was weak, the map stuttering. The forest closed in around us, the trees so thick they blocked out the sun, casting the car in shadow. The path grew rougher, more like a hiking trail than a road, and the main highway was long gone from view. "Are you sure this goes to Cebu?" I pressed, my voice sharper now. He didn't respond immediately, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, meeting mine for a brief, unreadable moment. "Faster way," he repeated, his tone unchanged. My heart began to race. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he knew the area better than I did. Maybe this was a local route. But the deeper we went, the more wrong it felt. The forest was a labyrinth of green and brown, with no signs of life, no other cars, no houses. Just us alone on this forgotten trail. Panic clawed at me. "Look," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "I'd really prefer the main road. Can you turn back?" His response was immediate, cutting through the air like a blade. No turning back now. His eyes stayed locked. On the path, his hands gripping the wheel with a quiet intensity. My breath caught in my throat. I fumbled for my phone, hoping to call someone, anyone, but before I could unlock it, he glanced back, his voice low and deliberate. "Phone won't. Help you out here." The words landed like a punch. My mind raced, calculating my options. The car was moving too fast to jump out, and the dense underbrush on either side offered no escape. We drove for another 5 minutes, the path narrowing until it was barely a trail. Then, abruptly, he stopped in a small clearing, the trees forming, a suffocating wall around us. My pulse thundered in my ears. He turned in his seat, his eyes cold and unyielding. "You need to run," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Run now." I froze, my brain struggling to process his words. "What?" I stammered, gripping my backpack like a lifeline. "Run," he repeated, his tone urgent, final. "Don't. Look back." Fear surged through me, raw and electric. I didn't wait for him to say it again. I flung open the door, my bag slung over one shoulder, and sprinted into the trees. Branches tore at my skin, roots snagged my feet, but I didn't stop. My breath came in ragged gasps, the forest a blur of green and shadow. I expected to hear him behind me, footsteps, shouts, but there was only silence, heavy and oppressive. I ran until my lungs burned, my legs trembling from exhaustion. When I finally stopped, leaning against a tree to catch my breath, I realized I had no idea where I was. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, the clearing long gone. Hours later, after wandering in a haze of fear and adrenaline, I stumbled onto a paved road. A kind elderly couple in a pickup truck stopped. For me, their faces etched with concern as I recounted a sanitized version of my story. They drove me to the nearest town, where I caught a bus to Cebu, my hands still shaking. Later, in a dimly lit bar, I overheard locals talking about drivers who tested tourists, playing cruel pranks to scare them. Some said it was a twisted, local tradition, a way to assert control over outsiders. Others hinted at darker possibilities, stories of travelers who vanished in those woods, never reaching their destinations. I don't know what the driver's intentions were that day. Was he toying with me, feeding off my fear? Or had he, in some strange way, saved me from something worse lurking in that forest? His eyes, cold and piercing in the rearview mirror, still haunt me. Every time I see a dirt road winding into the trees, I feel that same chill. A reminder that even the most picturesque places can hide dangers you never see coming. As a freelance designer, I've always cherished the freedom to work from anywhere. My laptop is my office, and the world is my canvas. In 2024, craving inspiration, I decided to spend a month in a quaint European town I'd found online. Its cobblestone streets, ivy-covered cottages, and misty hills promised a fairy tale escape from my routine. After browsing Airbnb, I booked. A cozy rental hosted by a man named Stefan. The listing glowed with 5-star reviews praising his warmth and the house's rustic charm. The photos showed a snug, vintage space with lace curtains and wooden beams, perfect for sparking creativity. It seemed like a dream come true. When I arrived, Stefan greeted me at the door, a tall, wiry man in his 50s with a broad smile and kind eyes. His handshake was firm, his voice warm as he carried my bags inside and gave me a tour. The house was even lovelier in person, with creaking floors, antique furniture, and the faint scent of lavender. Stefan pointed out local cafes and hiking trails, his recommendations thoughtful and detailed. I felt instantly at ease, grateful for such a welcoming host. The first few days were idyllic. I worked at a wooden desk by a window overlooking the town, then spent afternoons exploring, sketching the town's charm in my notebook. But soon, subtle cracks appeared in the fairy tale. I started noticing fleeting shadows outside my window, brief glimpses of someone passing by, too quick to identify. At first, I chalked it up to neighbors or passers-by, but the shadows became more frequent, always just out of sight. One afternoon, as I sipped tea on the porch, I caught Stefan standing near the garden, staring at the house. His posture was stiff, his gaze fixed on my window. When he saw me looking, he waved, gesturing toward the roses as if inspecting them. "Just checking the garden," he called, his smile as warm as ever. But something in his eyes felt off, like a mask slipping. "Everything okay?" I asked, stepping outside. "Oh yes," he replied smoothly, brushing dirt from his hands. "Just making sure the place is perfect for you." His words were polite, but his gaze lingered too long, studying me rather than the house. I nodded, forcing a smile, and went back inside, telling myself it was nothing. But the incidents piled up. I'd catch him near the windows at odd hours, always with an excuse, checking the gutters, trimming the hedges. Each time, his smile was impeccable, but his eyes held a quiet intensity that made my skin prickle. A week into my stay, I woke at 2 a.m., groggy from working late. The house was dark, save for the faint glow of my laptop. As I stretched, preparing for bed, I felt a chill, like someone was watching. Then I saw it, a faint shadow under my door, as if someone stood just outside. My heart thudded. I strained to listen, hearing only silence at first, then a soft shuffle, like a foot scuffing the floor. My mind raced, maybe it was the wind or the house settling, but the shadow remained unmoving. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The shadow shifted, followed by a soft knock. Heart pounding, I cracked the door open. There was Stefan, his face pale in the dim hallway light, his eyes oddly distant, like he was sleepwalking. "You're awake," he said, his tone too cheerful for the hour. "Just checking if you're comfortable." His smile was wide, but his gaze felt cold, almost predatory. "It's 2 a.m., Stefan," I said, gripping the door. "Why are you here?" He blinked, as if snapping out of a trance. "Thought I heard a noise," he said quickly. "Didn't mean to scare you." His eyes drifted past me, scanning my room, and I felt exposed, vulnerable. "I'm fine," I said firmly, hoping he'd leave. He lingered, his gaze lingering on me, then nodded and shuffled away. I locked the door, my hands trembling, and shoved a chair against it for good measure. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. Checked the pipes last night. Sorry for the disturbance. The handwriting was messy, unlike Stefan's usual neat script. I wanted to leave, but doubt crept in. Maybe I was overreacting. He was just a concerned host, right? But that night, around midnight, I heard it again, saw footsteps pausing outside my door. No knock, no voice, just the faint outline of a shadow. I sat frozen, clutching my phone, too scared to move. The presence lingered for what felt like hours before retreating. I left at dawn, packing my bags in a frenzy and booking a hotel in the next town. Before leaving, I reported Stefan to Airbnb, but when I checked later, his listing was still active, glowing with praise. I still see that shadow under my door in my nightmares, and I wonder how many others stayed in that house, unaware of the eyes watching them in the dark. Every summer, I chase the unknown, seeking places that feel like they've slipped through the cracks of time. In 2024, I set my sights on South America, drawn to a remote mountain village I'd read about online. Its cobblestone streets, whitewashed houses, and vibrant flower boxes looked like something from a painting. Far from the tourist trail, it promised authenticity and peace. After weeks of exploring bustling cities, I arrived at the village, its air crisp with the scent of pine and wildflowers. The villagers welcomed me with open arms, their smiles warm and genuine. My lodging was a cozy room in a family-run inn, with wooden beams and a balcony overlooking the lively square. The innkeepers, Rosa and her husband, treated me like family, their teenage son eager to practice his English. I fell into the village's rhythm, spending mornings teaching online and afternoons wandering the hills, photographing the misty landscape. It was paradise until I noticed him. He was an elderly man, perhaps in his late 70s, with weathered skin and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow the light. I first saw him on my second day, standing at the edge of the square, staring at me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. His face was expressionless, his gaze unwavering even when I met his eyes. I brushed it off, assuming he was just curious about the outsider. But the next day, there he was again, watching me from across a cafe as I sipped coffee. His stare was relentless, like a predator sizing up prey. I mentioned him to Rosa, who frowned slightly. "That's Emilio," she said. "He's been here forever. Keeps to himself, harmless." Her words were reassuring, but her tone held a flicker of doubt. Over the next few days, Emilio was everywhere, at the market, near the church, once, even outside the inn, standing just close enough to feel threatening. His dark eyes followed me, unblinking, and I began to feel like a specimen under glass. On my last night, as I lay in bed, the inn quiet around me, I heard footsteps on the gravel path outside my window. They were slow, deliberate, stopping just beneath my shutters. My heart raced as I listened, the silence heavy with dread. Then came a soft rustling, like fingers brushing the wood, followed by a faint tug at the shutter's handle. My breath caught. A whisper drifted through the night, so soft I barely caught it. "I just want to see you." I grabbed my phone. dialing Rosa's number with shaking hands. The footsteps retreated as she and her husband arrived, their faces grim. "You're safe," Rosa's husband said, but his voice wavered. I didn't sleep, sitting vigil until dawn. As I left the village, I saw Emilio one last time, standing in the square, his eyes locked on me, cold and unreadable. The experience left a scar, a reminder that even the most beautiful places can harbor shadows that watch too closely. Hostels are my haven when I travel. The shared spaces, late-night conversations, and fleeting friendships create a magic you can't find in hotels. In 2023, I booked a popular hostel in Spain, drawn by its vibrant reviews and prime location. The place was everything I'd hoped: colorful, lively, with nightly events that brought travelers together. My dorm room housed 6 of us, a mix of men and women, all friendly and eager to share stories. I hit it off with Olivia, a fellow traveler, and we explored the city together, laughing over tapas and swapping tailies. One roommate, Lucas, stood out. In his mid-20s, with short blonde hair and a laid-back vibe, he seemed friendly at first, asking the usual questions: where I was from, where I'd been. But his attention soon felt excessive. He was always nearby, lingering in conversations, his half-smile lingering too long. One evening, as Olivia and I planned dinner, Lucas hovered, pretending to scroll on his phone but clearly watching us. When he asked to join us, I agreed. Hostile camaraderie, right? But his questions grew oddly specific. His gaze fixed on me in a way that felt rehearsed. Out the next day, Olivia left for another city, leaving me on my own. I returned to the hostel at noon to find Lucas sitting on his bed, as if waiting. "Back early," he said, his smile too eager. I kept my plans vague, unnerved by his interest. That night, after dinner with new friends, I slipped into the dorm past midnight. The room was dark, the other beds quiet. As I settled in, I heard a soft shuffle, too close to be a sleeper shifting. My eyes adjusted, and my blood ran cold. Lucas stood at the foot of my bed, staring down at me with that same half-smile. "Lucas, what are you doing?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Just checking on you," he said, his tone calm, almost amused. "Sleep well," he added, lingering a moment before returning to his bed. I lay awake, heart pounding, too scared to close my eyes. At dawn, I packed and left without a word, catching a train to the next town. Lucas's empty smile still haunts me, a reminder that even in the warmest places, some shadows linger too close. These stories are a stark reminder to stay vigilant, no matter how inviting a place seems. Which tale unnerved you the most? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling travel stories. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.